Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast. Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast. What happens to your creative work when financial survival becomes the full-time job? Today's episode is about reclaiming your peace of mind and why financial literacy might be the most radical form of self-care for creatives. We're honored to have with us Bayleigh Laster, a financial educator and former healthcare professional whose journey from the medical field to money mentorship has redefined what it means to care for others. With a background rooted in high-stakes patient care, Bayleigh witnessed firsthand how a single medical event could devastate a family's finances. This experience sparked a personal mission to master financial literacy, not just for herself, but to empower others to do the same. Today, her work centers on making wealth-building strategies accessible and practical for everyday people navigating real financial stress. Bayleigh's work is grounded in empathy and education, helping people break cycles of scarcity and step into financial confidence. Her insights have been shared on stages like the Women Investing in Real Estate, and her growing influence is helping creative professionals reframe their relationship with money with clarity and courage. With our host, Devron Bowman, Bayleigh will share how the financial burden impacts creativity and what financial clarity truly means when building a life that supports your vision, sustains your well-being, and frees you to create from a place not of pressure, but power.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
So
Drew.
much, Drew. That's awesome. Bayleigh, I am so excited to have you here with us. I know that the first question our audience is going to ask is why we have a non-creative individual that's not in design or anything like that along with us on the podcast. And to kind of just give everyone a heads up, we met through FriendFest, which is an event curated by our amazing data scientist, team member, and DJ Hannah here in Louisville, Kentucky. And you had such just a confident and powerful presence. I was able to get to know you a little bit better while exploring you through social media, and to find out that you are a licensed financial expert made so much sense. And so I was so excited to have you on our podcast to talk about the importance of financial stability, just in general, but especially for our creative audience who probably are quicker to accept that starving artist title and to really not prioritize financial stability. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Is there anything else that you want to add to our introduction, or would you like to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Oh, thank you for that. First, thank you both. Devon, I really appreciate your time and energy. True, you are such a gift. I really think that y'all did a great job of sharing just a little bit about why, my background and where I'm at now. I can expand on that. So let's just get into the conversation. Let's make it happen.
Okay, perfect. So you have a super unique story. You came from a medical healthcare background, and that in of itself is such a stable and financially secure, industry that you probably could
Mhm.
have just sailed along in it and retired beautifully and comfortably. But at some point, there was a momentum shifting moment in which you realized that you could do more, not just for yourself, but for others. So, to start this conversation, can you tell us a little bit just about your history, your journey through healthcare, and then what really inspired this transition into the financial industry?
Oh, absolutely. So for me, I have my license, my license, I'm a licensed occupational therapist. So I have my master's in that. I got into occupational therapy because I have a heart and desire to see people's lives changed. And so ultimately, it wasn't a moment, it was many moments.
Okay.
So working in healthcare, I worked in the hospital was my main sphere for 5 years. And I kept running across the same scenario.
Mm.
Normal, average day Americans stuck in a financial situation because of one medical crisis, either losing homes, retirement, or even family members, if they had to become caregivers, would have to give up jobs in order to make that work. And so I really selfishly just said, how do I make sure that's not me?
Yeah.
I don't, I don't want that. I think it came really true when I sat down with a speech therapist who is in her like 60s and having medical crises happen and sharing with me. Being an empathic person, people share or unburden depending on the moment. And I really, that just kind of alarms were raising in my head. I was like, what is going on? So once I got myself in a situation where I was having the right conversation, got help from someone in the same position as myself, I said, hey, I actually really resonate with that.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn more. And I went from there.
That's awesome. And so, can you speak to us a little bit about that journey, maybe specifically in your transition, what were the things that you were not aware of? Like, what were the fears that you were facing? Because I feel like, and especially for me personally, one, I am personally excited to have you along on this episode. I know that it is going to benefit, so many of our listeners, but I was raised in a very strictly religious household. I was
Yeah.
actually raised with the thought process that really nothing that you do for financial stability in this world matters, and that we're
Yeah.
living for this promise like after we die, and all of this stuff. And it really created a mentality that segregated me from financial stability. And now that I'm removed from that, now that I'm in my 30s, I'm honestly playing this game of catch up. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you along with us, because I would love for this to reach people who are years younger than us and can kind of
Sure.
avoid those mistakes and start to build something really meaningful and important. So as you started to dive into this financial journey, yeah, like what were some of the challenges that you faced, or what were some of the surprising and just valuable pieces of knowledge that you discovered along the way?
Yeah. First, I'm just going to say, oh, do I resonate with that? Our backgrounds are very similar in that sphere. In my household, it was, God will provide, right? And I'm not going to, not saying that's not the thing,
Yeah.
but that was just, that was the only, that was the answer to any money issues.
Mm,
And so I came at my finances in the same way as you.
okay.
I think the big missing piece for me was the financial literacy. It was the education part. um, I might get wrong on the statistic, but it's in the 80s, 90s. I think it's like 98% of schools within the United States, traditional public schools, do not have any financial education.
Mm,
And so you're coming out with no financial education, but yet you get a job, you're going to have to pay taxes, you're going to have to do your own taxes. I know we're away from checks and things like that, but then you're managing credit. So even a bigger issue. And so I just didn't understand money. I didn't understand how it grew. I had money in several different places, but if someone sat down with me and asked any questions, I'd be like, I don't know about that.
mm,
Like, it doesn't make sense. And so for me, what shifted the script was the education.
mm,
And that's the part that drew me in as an educator myself. I said, hey, if we're all missing this, it's not just me. I'm smart. You're smart. I think everyone here, I think everyone
mm,
has their own intelligence, but we're intelligent individuals. So why is it that we're working in a system that's not actually working for us to learn and know better and do better? It's working, oftentimes it feels like, to keep us down. So
mm.
education was the big part for me. It freed up a lot of my anxiety and stress because then I understood a plan could be made and then I could do that plan.
Yeah. So, can you speak a little more to, I guess, your feelings of anxiety or possibly even fear? Because for me, it is 100%, as you mentioned, like, one, there's so many options. I have no idea,
Yes.
where to begin. And then, for creatives who are independent, which is usually the goal for creatives, like we want financial
Right.
independence, we want to work for ourselves, that adds such another level of complexity, because when you're working for a corporation or for a business, you have things like a 401k account, you might have like a high yield savings account, they're providing benefits for you, and also your taxes become much less complicated. But especially as you're trying to step out on your own, it was one of those shocking realizations for me that, like, whatever the number I set, I'm going to need to make two or three times more than that to actually
Mm.
care for my finances in the same way as I would in the corporate world. So, when you started this journey, what were the most anxiety filled moments, or what was the most difficult part of that transition into financial literacy for you?
Yeah. So to be really honest and upfront, so for me, one of the turning points was I was sitting down having a conversation with my partner. We were kind of planning out some future things. And so obviously it was involving some money. And I started crying. I
Oh,
couldn't even sit in that space with it. I felt so uncomfortable she was asking very basic questions, how much is here? What are you putting through the future? Yada, yada. This was before I
mm,
sat down with someone. It actually led to me sitting down with someone.
awesome.
And I just cried. And she took a moment, pointed me in the right direction, obviously. But that stress is still something that I still will sit down with myself and say, hey, if we're having some concerns, when I shifted out of healthcare to full-time do finance because I knew that this was it. I knew that this was going to be the changer to do the impact I wanted, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stress and anxiety over that
Mm,
because that security, even though the income was coming in from elsewhere, it still felt like this is that security blanket. So to me, I think oftentimes we're dealing with that because we haven't sought out the help. If I'm sick, or for example, with anxiety, who do I go and talk to and
yeah.
deal with and find strategies for my anxiety? I go to a professional. I go to a doctor when I have health issues. I go to a money doctor when I have
Yeah.
issues and I'm not sure. Because at the end of the day, if I go to the internet, I'm going to be lost for days. I'm going to be stuck in indecision because someone's not teaching and educating me. I'm just absorbing
Mm,
so much. So I think that's the big one for me. What shifted it was one, recognizing that not talking about it wasn't getting me anywhere.
mm.
And then starting to have those conversations shifted it.
Yeah, no, I love that you had someone so reliable and strong to rely on as well, because what you said is so right, especially in our day and age. Like, if you start to turn to the internet for resources and answers to questions that you might not even know, it's just this rabbit hole of uncertainty, and it
Mhm.
complicates that decision making process so much. So to have someone who was able to guide you and to reassure you and to set you off on your own journey, but in a targeted way, is so, so powerful. And so what do you feel like the contrast to that is? Because I know that you one-on-one witnessed so many of these scenarios where it was really one life incident that shifted things for everyone. Do you think that it's really just the uncertainty or the surprise factor, or what do you think are the biggest hurdles that keep people from seeking, kind of financial literacy?
I think it's insight.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
think oftentimes we are uh, one of the, I listen to a lot of personal development.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I was listening to this morning was just talking about if every trial that we're dealing with is a reaction from something happening to us, we're not intentionally living an intentional life. So if it is a medical crisis that causes it, and that's what causes the ricochet for most, it often does.
Yeah.
Finance is a leading factor in divorce. Finance is a leading factor in not being able to deal with medical issues. So when that's happening, we're just living by reaction.
Hmm.
So to me, if we don't have that insight to say, hey, my insight came in when I'm like, I'm crying about this. I
Yeah.
can't to the safest person I have conversations with,
Yeah.
I am literally crying and needing to be like, I need a break. This is a lot because it felt like too much. Well, why?
Hmm.
Why did it feel like too much? It's an education piece paired with the insight to say, hey, I'm maybe not quite there, paired with the tools to say, now what do I do?
I love that. Okay, so I do want to deep dive into just some of the suggestions that you have, some of the guidance that you have. But first, I
Sure.
would love to just gain a personal perspective for you. What was your biggest motivating factor in wanting financial security? Or I guess, what are the top two or three? Because I know that having financial security as just a life thing is so important, but I feel like, especially for creative people, for adventurous people, for people who want to conquer the world and leave their mark, there are several other factors that kind of play into it. So, like big goals that they've set or big visions that they've had. So, beyond just really wanting that stability for yourself moving forward, were there any other factors that really played a part in your motivation, or that you've been, really excited to draw closer to as a result of your efforts?
Okay. So you might have heard, big one being your why will make you cry,
Mm,
right? Whatever it is that is your biggest motivating factor, that's going to get to your heart, kind of put a knife in it because
yeah.
it's motivating. So yes, my family, the lifestyle, in terms of travel is big for us. My partner's family is out of the country, so Peru's huge. For us to be able to go there yearly to see and be with family. But beyond that, it was really experiencing one of the most severe. I found my why when I saw a need, and that need was um, individuals who have dealt with severe trauma, sexual assault, sexual abuse from a young age tend to be perpetrators of that. And in order to get the right treatment in a place that really is going to work on healing and rehab, costs about 15K a month for that to happen. And I have someone near and dear to me that had that experience, and it shifted my life.
Mm,
The reason I ultimately stepped out of healthcare, because I
mm,
knew at the end of the day what my why was to limit that financial issue for people, to be able to have a place that families could say, hey, my child's going to be here, they're going to get the help and care that they need, and they can be reintegrated back into society.
yeah.
They're not going to end up in prison, they're not going to end up losing their life or choosing to end their life because of this. And for me, it was never going to be funded by healthcare,
Yeah.
because that dollar amount was so high and is so high. It
Yeah.
scares me still to this day. But
Yeah.
my ultimate why was, if I can't make this happen, then am I willing to say to all of these other girls or boys or whoever that have gone through this, that I knew it. I knew there was this need. And I
Mm.
knew, our government's never going to pay for that. Um, so it was that, having something so big.
That's such a powerful point, and that is such a like a great realization for someone who is pursuing financial literacy, who is starting to have an understanding of it and the importance, in contrast with people who just look at a number like that and just it is so unobtainable. I mean, I know the me that existed, 10 years ago would look at that and it's not even feasible. Like there's not a way to reach it, and it is so disappointing that some of the most necessary things for development, for improvement, or for progress are just such capitalist things, So yeah. Um
Doesn't have to be.
it doesn't have to be. No, definitely. So, I would love to ask you what your feeling is now having a little bit of financial security, because I feel like, especially for creatives, for people who are living life on the road, who might not have, location stability or something like that, that oftentimes the feeling that you receive from having savings, from knowing that, you can intentionally pitch clients and you're not reliant on devaluing yourself every month to make ends meet. Like, what is the difference in your mentality and the way that you move through the world and interact with people, just knowing that if some things arise, you're secure, that you can handle them, and that you're taken care of?
So I think that the big piece a lot of us miss, and what I didn't have years ago, was that emergency fund, right? So I before I moved and launched full time into this, I my emergency fund, that number was bigger, right? So I
Yeah.
was like, it's got to take, even if something happens crazy, I'm not helping anybody for however long, am I still going to have income to live on?
Mhm.
And so for me, that's always been my push, my point myself back to,
Yeah.
because now, even as I'm not desperate
Yeah.
to work with individuals, I know that when I sit down with individuals, that they're needing it more than I need it, right?
Mm.
You already know my why. So my why is big. Obviously, the goal is to make a lot of money so that way this can be done. But I'm not looking at it like that. I'm looking at it as, how can I provide the best education? How can I walk alongside this with you, provide education to you, and ultimately let go of the outcome?
Oh,
Because, and then that's my security. I've got my fallback on. I would say at a time where politically there's a lot going on. That's my big thing for women, individuals in the queer community, Black, all of it. It's like we are all needing to be more financially secure, so we're not so reactive. Because
yeah.
when we're not financially secure, we're reactive. We're responding like, "Oh, we have to have this thing," and ultimately, no, we don't. We can do a lot of different things, but to get yourself away from feeling like your back is pushed up against the wall.
And that is such a significant point, especially to our creative audience, because like I myself have been through that cycle of, okay, well, I want to work with this top tier client. I would love for it to be at this price point, but I need to pay bills this month. So, it kind of creates this cycle of devaluing yourself, of your work, and clearly what you said, that desperation. And that is just such a unpleasant thing to live with, especially when your perception of yourself and your work is full of value. It kind of creates this just huge like conflict. Um, so when it comes to financial management, like financial literacy, what do you think are the things that are missing from normalizing those conversations? Because you mentioned it a little bit earlier that, yeah, I mean, through school, we're, taken through all of these classes that really have no practical app. Like, I much would have rather learned financial literacy than no bake cookies in school. So, what do you
Yeah.
think are like the normal conversations that we need to have, or how do you think we start normalizing financial health in a way that it's not so scary or so foreign?
Yeah. I think as we start to have the conversation, right? So I'm a big dinner table conversationalist.
Okay.
That's how we
Yeah.
grew up in my family.
Yeah.
So it would be like, hey, just asking questions. And when I started looking into my stuff, I started being more pointed with asking other women what they were making, honestly. It's ultimately what led me to where I'm at because I was like, oh, I like those answers.
Yeah.
But when I asked that, and then you can also kind of say, hey, like what is it that what are our rules of money, right? So how does money grow? How does interest grow? That rule of 72 is a big one. Most of us don't even know how our interest is growing or how long it'll take for us to double our money. So the rule of 72 says, I take whatever that interest is I have, and I divide that by 72, and my outcome is going to be how many years does it take for that money to double. So that's a big one. And how our money grows. So are we in a fixed strategy like a CD, high yield savings account, bank account? It's not really growing a whole lot.
Yeah.
Is our money in variable accounts? Where I don't want to get too detailed. Am I getting too
No,
detailed?
definitely. No, definitely do. I would love to
Okay.
just go ahead and dive deep into this, because this is the thing. I feel like there are so many conversations that exist, and especially on the internet right now, the high yield savings accounts are like all the rage. It's what's being posted everywhere. We
Right.
what options do you think right now are the best for us to explore? Heather's asking in the chat, what is the rule of 72? I know that you touched on it just now, but yeah, no, I would love to go into maybe your top two or three strategies or pieces of advice for, just starting this journey. The things that you have found most valuable and impactful in your own.
Yeah, so we'll keep it high level
Okay.
because if we're gonna do more than that,
Yeah.
that's a one-on-one conversations. Everybody's stuff is
Okay.
slightly
We'll leave
different.
your
So
contact
my
information at the end of this if people need to contact you for that
yeah,
one-on-one. Yeah.
absolutely, and I love those. So our rule of 72 is, I'm taking that 72 and I'm dividing it by, let's say 10%.
Okay.
So if I'm dividing it by that 10%, it's going to take me 7.2 years for that money to double. Okay. So obviously, when we're looking at lower numbers, high yield savings account right now are around 3 to 4%. I do think those are going to be going lower here as it seems,
Okay.
right? My educated guess would say those would go down. But when we're looking at a 3 to 4%, when our inflation is around that same number, A high yield savings account, what is that great for? Our emergency fund.
Mm, yeah.
It's great for emergency fund.
Okay.
But am I going to grow my long-term savings in that? No,
Mm,
because that again is not a high enough interest, right?
yeah.
I like to look at areas where I'm going to get around 6 to 12%, if not more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that high yield's not going to quite get me there. Um, and then we were talking about different ways money can grow. So fixed, I would say that high yield savings account, right? We're not going to see exponentially, same as CDs, hanging around those same numbers. Our variable, this is one you want to think about is in regards to the market.
Okay.
So this one would be anything money market accounts, Robinhood accounts, 401k, IRAs, all of that is variable. So what does that mean? Money goes up, market goes up, money goes up, right?
Mhm.
But when the market drops down, we lose money. Okay. Then we have our last one. Last way our money can grow is an index strategy. So index strategy is a mixture of both. Index strategy says market goes up, money goes up. But in index strategy, market goes down, index has a 0% floor. So you're
Mm,
not losing money based upon how the market is doing.
yeah.
So then that's another thing, you just kind of diving into each. And that's where I like to sit down and say, hey, what is your current financial picture? What
Yeah.
does that look like? And then not only am I asking that, I'm asking, what is your goals? Where are you looking to go? Because my rich life, as I just explained to you, being able to travel outside of the country, be in Peru, being able to fund a massive project.
Yeah.
Like those are big, those are my goals. That my rich life is going to look very different than yours, Devron. And I can't apply the same things to mine as I would to yours. And that's where we sit down and do one-on-one.
But that is such a big point, and especially, I've been in the creative industry for, I guess, almost a decade now, and it is shocking to me, myself included, that as creatives, we fail to run ourselves as businesses. Like we rely on all of
Mm-hmm.
this organic traffic. We're putting all of
Mm-hmm.
these pieces of content out when really, if we had the financial stability to fund our vision and to invest in every post that we made and to invest in rapid growth and all of the pieces that it's almost as if we want to run a business, but we fail to consider ourselves as a business and fail to consider all of those necessary steps that make a business grow. And that is really where that financial stability comes into play. So, do you have any, like hard set rules or suggestions in regards to building an emergency fund or even how to tailor that to your personal lifestyle? Because I feel like every time I look at suggestions for an emergency fund, it's the same answer. It's like, what if something breaks down in your car? What if you need new tires? Like, what if there's a little emergency? But when you're helping someone prepare just kind of in a general sense, what do you think are the most important things for someone to consider for themselves in a unique way?
Okay. So I would kind of flip the framework.
Okay.
I think emergency fund, especially if I'm talking to creative,
Okay.
you're like, okay, whatever. This
Yeah.
mumbo jumbo that we're talking about over here,
Yeah.
emergency fund.
Mhm.
What I would look at is, hey, isn't it nice when you pay yourself first?
Yes.
Isn't it cool when you have a thing that you're going towards, you actually have the money?
Mhm.
So emergency fund for me is, what's our picture look like? If you were to say, hey, Bayleigh, for me, winter happens, and for some reason, January and February are as dry as they get.
Mhm.
So I for sure know that every single year, 2 times out of the year, 2 months, I am funding myself completely for the most part from my savings. Then I'd say, okay, hey, our emergency fund says we for sure need those 2 months plus,
Okay.
right? Whatever that plus being. Um, sometimes it's the car is older. Sometimes it's I know I'm going to have these other things. Okay, great. Let's calculate that in. What's that big picture? Then we work back. So if our emergency fund ultimately says we need to have $10,000, don't don't eat. You can't eat an elephant all in one bite, right? You're going to do a little bit at a time. And the way to do that is to automate it.
Mhm.
Set a comfortable number that you can automatically say it's going to transfer into, for example, maybe my high yield savings account, right? Going to automatically go into there.
Yep.
But I'm always going to challenge it
Okay.
because I like to gamify my stuff.
Mm.
I'm like, hey, yo, we could have gone out, drank out, I don't drink anymore, but when I was,
Yeah.
drink or do this food or yada, yada. And so what would I have spent? And sometimes I'm like, actually, I need to stay in. I'm, maybe I'm not even doing it for the money, but I choose that. I'm going to gamify that by paying myself 150 I could have chosen to spend on that night. Didn't let me feel that more. Okay, I'm going to pay myself.
Mm.
I've also used that same strategy because most of my stuff is spending on my card. And so we don't often see what we're spending until it's already spent.
Yeah.
And so I have my cards literally text me every time I spend any amount.
Nice.
Why? Because I want that additional input saying, hey, this is where you're at. Um, so hopefully that answered your question.
That it's beautiful, and that honestly ties right into, I guess, the next topic that I want to explore, which I think is going to be something just personally expressive for you, because in the content that I have seen from you, one of your biggest things is that you as an individual are your biggest asset. Everything that
Hmm.
is compiled beyond that is something that you own. It is definitely an asset as well, but for us to actually view ourselves as an asset is such a big thing. So why is that something that you are so confident about? And I mean, what does that look like to you, or what type of meaning does that have for you personally when you view yourself as an asset?
So when I view myself as an asset, I no longer question things like, should I do this personal development thing?
Mm.
Should I take this trip with my family? Should I, like, all of those are an immediate yes now
Okay,
because I
awesome.
know what I'm getting out of those.
Yeah,
I know the outcome when I pour back into myself. I know the outcome when I do the things and spend the time with the people that are most important to me in my entire life, right?
yeah.
And that comes from seeing so much loss.
Mm.
That comes from sitting with people as they're losing a loved one, as they're dealing with medical crises. Like stroke patients were a big one for me because in a blink of an eye, their life went from I was at work, I was doing this thing, everything was fine, to now I'm not able to sit up on my own. And so seeing that, I'm like, our life is so short.
Yeah.
If we don't see ourselves as an asset, we're not pouring back into ourselves, where is our money going? Is it going to distraction, avoidance? Um, I'd rather it go back into me.
Man, that is very powerful because yeah, I guess when you do look at the intent and the purpose behind money and start to place definitions behind it like that, it does become much more clear. I've definitely utilized your system before. I mean, even as something as small as like going to the store and like not buying a six pack of beer, it's like, okay, well, that's $10 that I would have spent. Why don't I just put this up? And that becomes
Yeah.
such a repetitive habit, and it plays into one, a healthier and more fulfilling lifestyle, but you're also
Yeah.
building that extra layer of security behind it, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
So, do you have any unique stories or experiences, or even some advice to share to people who just might be ashamed? I mean, there was definitely a period of my life where I was down just super bad, had gone through a divorce, really just didn't have any financial training, was going through a huge spiritual readjustment. And it's like, my life was so chaotic and shattered that it became just like a repetitive cycle of, how do I get out of this? And it also became a thing where it's like I look at my credit score, I look at my lack of savings and all of these things and my age, and it's like I want to fix it, but I'm kind of ashamed to even reach out to someone for the first step. So you know if someone came to you and was just in a very dismal money situation, what are the types of reassurance that you would offer? And I mean, guidance towards like the first steps of recovery.
Yeah. So not only what I would say, but what I coach myself through, right? So for me, it was I was on that journey,
Mhm.
massively stressed, panic. We already talked about it. What kind of shifted the script for me is when I'm going to sit down with someone, I'm going to say, okay, hey, I get it. We're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about where you're at now, but I want to know where you're going.
Mhm.
Because if we focus on that past, if we focus on the choices that we have made that we can no longer do anything about, we're going to stay in that same mentality and doing the same things that led us to where we're at now.
Yeah.
But if we focus on our future, if we say, this is what I'm building, growing, this is why this is so important to me, then my only options are what? Do this or stick with this other. And it feels way, way better when we focus on that positive. I know right now a lot of the conversation is positive mindset, yada yada. No,
Yeah.
we literally create the life we want. We
Yeah.
get to. So I ask more questions about that, and then we backtrack.
Mm.
Okay. If we need to have $10,000 in our emergency fund, okay, great. I'm not expecting it's going to happen overnight, but what little steps are we doing?
Yeah.
And then how can we affirm ourselves? Hey, I just saved $10 this month. Okay, it doesn't feel great, but that was 10 more dollars in the month before.
Yeah.
So like we got to focus on that, because then that when we feel good about it, we do it more. When
Yeah.
it stops stressing us out, we do it more.
Mm. How often do you reward yourself? Just as a personal question, because I know that that is it's like the reward feels so good, and I feel like sometimes we set such short-sighted goals to reach that reward that it's really not beneficial. So do you have some sort of personal strategy, or do you just like do you set really big goals and then build up to them, or what have you found is most like motivating and exciting for you?
So I'm a big one with I don't so I Ramit Sethi talks a lot about how to live your richer life, right? And so
Okay.
that's where a lot of my mindset around rich life has been developed and grown.
Okay.
Because I no longer look at someone else and think, hey, they're doing X, Y, or Z. I
Mhm.
usually look, yeah, they're doing X, Y, or Z week by week, but have they been out of the country for a month?
Yeah.
Are they planning to do that frequently? Are they like, so my rich life is not going to look the same as that. So that comparison game can really mess us up.
Mm,
So that's a big one. Then also, what dollar amount are we talking about?
mm,
If it's like less than 50, $100, I'm not really looking at that as a cutout thing or not cutout thing. Like
yeah.
that's how much difference does that actually make to
Mm,
my overall financial picture?
mm,
So rewards for me often look like trips and travel. Um, right now it's looking for us, it's about quarterly. And I consider if I've reached my income goals, if I've reached kind of where I'm needing to be, that is a part of it. I think reward and punishment are both helpful. Not everyone does really well with rewards because sometimes we just get a little too crazy with it. And not everyone does well with punishment. But
yeah.
I like a reward punishment system where it's like, hey, if I reach this, we're going here.
Mm,
And if I don't, I'm doing this.
yeah.
And usually it's going to push me over towards getting to where I want to be closer, because I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
or I
No,
don't want to miss the thing.
I love that, and it's like that value amount that you just spoke about and how it's like really not even a stressful decision for you. I think about all of my creative friends, and it's like those are the moves that actually do make a difference in the span of a year. That's the
Hmm.
difference between paying extra for a monthly subscription to a platform or
Hmm.
to a tool that you need versus paying for it annually and saving that extra like 50 or $60. Like there's so many decisions that we could make that would be beneficial for us in the long run that we're so stressed to make in that moment because we might not have that financial stability. And so instead of investing more money, we invest more time, which creates this cycle of I'm not financially stable. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to work harder. And that is such a stressful situation to be stuck in, definitely. So
Yes.
Heather's got a question right now, which is definitely applicable with all of the political climate, with all of the advancements in AI, with the economy as a whole, just readjusting and shifting. Do you have any advice that you would give to people who are losing their jobs or who are maybe not sure if their jobs will even exist in the future? Like, what type of moves should we be making right now that would just allow us a stress-free future of not being pressured to make decisions that might not be in our best interest?
I think that's a great question, Heather. So the reality is that our climate is always changing.
Mm,
Okay. Even though right now it feels like a lot is going on, there's historically We look at history, a lot has gone on over and over and over and over again. So it's not that different, right? Not to get into politics at all, but just saying change is not different. So for me, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I've increased my savings. I've increased what it looks like for me to say, hey, there's been actually a couple trips this year that I've said, it wasn't ones I ultimately chose. And I just decided there's a lot going on. I'm still increasing that savings. So there's just a few things that I'm not doing.
Mm,
Many things I'm still doing, but I'm choosing wisely
mm,
because at the end of the day, just like everybody else, we don't want to be stuck in a position where we don't get to choose because the money is the dollar sign,
yeah.
right? That's the bottom line. You don't want to end up in a job that you'll hate. You don't want to have to stay there, don't have to do all this different stuff. And money at this point will allow that.
Mm,
Um, so increasing savings is a big one. Developing new skills. I think when I sat down with someone the other day and he was talking about how he had to make a really hard decision and he nearly didn't make it because it went against how he was investing. He was like, no, I'm not going to sell this thing. This is what I'm trying to accumulate. But because sought wise counsel, talked about it with the right people, and then ultimately made that shift and made that change,
mm,
he increased in what his return on his investment was far more than he ever
mm,
foresaw. So for me, I would say the same. My shift out of healthcare was scary.
yeah.
It was something I was nervous about, but I've ultimately made more money. I've
Mm,
ultimately seen a better outcome from that.
yeah.
And so if we don't do the hard things, we're going to just live by reaction. Let's live more intentionally.
That is the hardest thing to do when you're in the moment, is to choose to sacrifice something that is immediately fulfilling for something
Yeah.
that is future fulfilling and, I mean, realistically unsure. Like, we're never guaranteed that
Mm-mm.
reality. So to really prioritize our future selves over immediate gratification is such a big thing. And so in line with that vein, what traits have you found both in yourself and in, clients who have made rapid progress, and even within your network and community, in terms of the type of mindset that you need, the type of emotional intelligence that you need, and the type of vulnerability that you need to embark on this journey?
Well, one, you have to be vulnerable.
Mm,
So unless I'm going to take all this time and, but before I had the education, before all this, if I had taken all that time and just said, let me figure this out myself, um, where would I end up? I wouldn't end up in the same place. If you want to go somewhere, sure, you can go alone. But if you want to go fast, you go with someone. So you get that help, you get that education, you get some recommendations, and then ultimately you are the best person to make those decisions. um, I think, and on top of that would be to say, hey, what does it look like for us to, sorry, my brain just spaced out.
it's okay.
I saw the question on the bottom and I was like
Yeah, I know.
distracted.
That's okay. I think just maybe future planning for you, as well as, in a partner, I think it's strange because anytime I think about financial literacy, it's always such a personal thing. And that might just
Mhm.
be because of my background and the fact that it's still something that I'm figuring out. But even in terms of how you connect with clients, how you progress in business, and even home life, like, it is such a big impact. And I think it's such a huge source of stability and confidence to bring into, like, a new relationship or into a new part of life, definitely.
I think it is. But if we view all of our sayings around money are tend to be very negative. And so I'm not surprised that when majority, I would say 99.9% of individuals I sit down with
Mm,
have a very awkward money relationship, right?
yeah,
And so that we develop our money mindset, how we've learned about money from a young age, it's around 8 or 9.
yeah,
And so we're battling that. We're not battling this state right now. And so, what does it look like for me to honestly? I mean, we just have on in our household, we have honest conversations. We'll be like, hey, we're at this with X, Y, or Z. Where are you
mhm,
at with your personal savings? Where are you at with this? Where are you? And to be able just to talk about it and then say, hey, my goal was this is what I'm working towards.
yeah,
Um, usually we can't even get into that place until it's that almost that sickness mindset, right? Like, hey, we go to a doctor when we're sick, we go to a money doctor when we're not sure about things. I think annual checkups are always a big one, to sit down with a professional and say, hey, I've got clients who'll come back and be like, hey, my things have really shifted. Before, when we talked, I was in a W-2 job. Now I'm 1099.
Yeah.
Now everything's different. I'm like, oh, yay. I get excited, right?
Yeah.
The tax code was written for, now I don't do taxes,
Yeah.
right? To put that out there. But the tax code was written for business owners. It was not written for individuals who have a W-2. So when you know those things, now I'm able to be like, oh, Devin, you need help with your taxes? Yeah, let me send you over to this. Like now you can get the help from someone who's already in it and who can point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And why would you not? Because I mean, we all aspire to be great at the thing that we are passionate about. We all strive to be experts in something that we're passionate about. So, I mean, truly the most beneficial and efficient shortcut for us is to just be vulnerable, to be honest, and to approach a person who has made this their life, and especially someone who is as empathetic, as you, to be able to understand the situation, to understand the impact that it's having beyond finances, and then to be able to make realistic and compassionate readjustments. So, do you have maybe like your top three pieces of advice to give to people who are, just looking for a way to strategize, to achieve financial goals, to start setting, some new goals from zero?
Yeah. So big one would be, where's your money at right now?
Okay.
How is it growing? What
Okay.
interest rate is our money growing at?
Yeah.
Look at those things. Most people, when I sit down and when I'll ask them questions, okay, it's here, there, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, what's our interest rate? Not a clue. Also don't know where to look. So
Yeah.
then we'll sit down. Let's look at our statement. Okay. Now walk through that. So big one, where's our money at? Number two, automate your savings. Like start it right from the bat, automate that savings. Why? Because we should be paying ourselves first. We shouldn't be paying Uncle Sam, the house, the yada yada, if ultimately we can't pay ourselves. Now, I don't mean shouldn't, but like, if we're not paying ourselves, how are we going to get ahead?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to think what else.
Well, while you're
I mean,
thinking,
really,
maybe go
yeah,
ahead. So just to
no,
touch on the savings, like, do you think that it is important to have a savings account that is disconnected from something that you can touch, or what is like the optimal? Because I am definitely guilty of, like, I've got this savings account, but it's connected to everything else that
to
I
your bank
have. So if
account.
I need to dip
Yeah.
into it, like it's horrible. Like that is such a horrible habit. So what do you think like the most optimal situation is?
Optimal situation is it's separate. So
Okay.
just like with your business stuff, my thing with business owners is, hey, we need to have different accounts for our money that's from our business, because then it can go out, come in from the same space. Same with our savings. Our savings should be in a separate account.
Okay.
Mine is slightly obnoxious, but I do love it for this reason,
Okay.
because I have can have just as many problems as anybody else. So I know them and I work against them. So it's separate in another account, and it takes like a week for it to transfer out.
Oh man.
So like
Yeah. That would kill me.
that's right. But what
Yeah.
does that do? That ensures that my other accounts where everything's coming in and out, that ensures I keep my buffer in there. Okay. Because if you know, like, hey, I sometimes will forget, I'm not doing whatever. Okay, keep your buffer,
Yeah.
but we're still automating, because then we're not taking out from that emergency savings unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And an emergency usually can be, and granted, most people aren't a week. I think it's just because the different banks that they're in are
Yeah.
weird together. But an emergency, we can say, yes, I've got this 3K. It's coming out. It's going to the thing. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so normally towards the end of each of our episodes, we give our creators an opportunity to just kind of take us through their journey, as far as expressing gratitude for any mentors that you've had, any inspirations, any groups or communities. I know that we were talking a little bit before this episode aired, and there are definitely some communities that you prefer to be a part of, some that you
Yeah.
found, amazing success in. So I would love to give you, this last few minutes before we move into audience discussion to, just say thank you or express gratitude or just let us in on some of the experiences that have really led you to where you're at in your journey right now.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, I think ultimately my big thank you is to my partner, Paola. She saw my frustration with the medical system. She saw my frustration with where I was at. And she just very kindly and lovingly just started saying, asking those things, saying, hey, this it? This is where you see yourself? And that questioning ultimately allowed me to say, oh no, it's not. So incredibly grateful for that. She actually put me in. We were out on a trip to Florida, and she was like, "Oh, I've got a good friend for you to meet."
Yeah.
And it happened to be one of my nearest and dearest mentors and friend, Maria Puche, who I can call on a regular basis and do, and we'll talk to, right? If I'm wanting to be in a position where she's at, where this person is making the impact she's making, doing the things she's done, I stay really close at hand. And so having her in my life has changed
Yeah.
a lot for me. And then being a part of the right places, like if we are essentially an accumulation of the five people we are closest to, really shifted who I'm closest to at this point. I've started to say, hey, how can I spend more time around my mentors? How can I spend more time around these people? So that's a big one. And then being involved in community. You don't
Mm.
have to do all this alone.
Yeah. So, what do you think the impact is? Because that has been a reoccurring theme through the entirety of our podcast. Your community,
Yeah.
your boundaries are two of the most valuable and important things. So, when you found those five people that really exemplified the life that you wanted to strive for, or who really provided you inspiration and motivation and that clarity, like what type of impact do you think that it had on you, just in a financial way but also in a personal way? Like, how did it make you feel to be invited into those communities and to have those aspirations?
It changed my identity.
Mm,
At the end of the day, what I know and believe that I will achieve is, like I said, it still scares me,
yeah.
but I believe it's happening. It's
Mm,
currently happening. And so that identity piece was massive because I'm no longer looking at this version of Bayleigh who's the therapist and doing the rat race, which is okay. We need everyone in their roles. But for me,
yeah.
it became a rat race. That was my story. And so it changed that identity. It has increased my income. When I now talk to individuals, it used to be, I mean, everybody's going to talk about, oh, your coffee, your coffee, your coffee, right? Like if you
Yeah.
just stop doing that, sorry, your coffee is what, $5, $6 a day? Is that going to make a massive change in your finances? No.
Yeah.
So I don't even entertain those conversations. If you feel like you need to not do that, that's fine. That's on you.
Mm,
But how can I raise your level of identity to say what's a higher level conversation we can be having?
mm.
Whether it's saving, investing, moving towards your future goals, how can we talk about on that high level rather than these little tweaks? That's not going to do much.
Oh, I love that. I feel like the strongest network that you have will challenge you. And I feel like all of the
Yes.
weak networks that we surround ourselves with just accept or encourage the lifestyle that we're at. But when you elevate yourself, it becomes completely different. And to have a dream that's important and meaningful to you, and to be surrounded by people who not only believe that it can come true, but that you can make it come true, is
Yeah.
just such a big difference maker. I mean, like you said, it does. It will shift your entire identity in such a beautiful and powerful way. So I'm so happy
Yeah.
that you have that support system. And for any of you who are listening who don't have that, definitely find it. It is
Yeah.
such a big difference maker. I mean, I can personally attest to that, and just the amazing team that I have as a support system. So yeah. So we will move into our audience participation segment. So for everyone that's here, if you
Awesome.
have any personal or professional questions for Bayleigh, please feel free to drop them in the chat. In the meantime, we would love to know how we can keep up with you, how we can support you, what your year is looking like this year, what you've got going on. So how can we stay connected to you as we move forward?
Yeah. So I am on a launch where I am doing more social media,
Okay.
which I love seeing what y'all are doing and what you're doing personally, Deborah. And it's been seeing creatives, y'all challenge me. So I'm stretching that muscle
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
Um, I do teach workshops. I see one of the questions here is, do
Okay.
I teach workshops?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have any coming up right this moment, but we'll likely have one in the next 2 to 3 months,
Okay.
if not sooner. So that's a big one. What am I working towards? Oh, so many things. Honestly, right now, this is going to sound slightly off what we're talking about, but I am doing a really big garden project this year
I
that I'm
saw,
super
yes, saw those
excited.
videos.
Well, that's not my garden.
Okay. Okay.
That is a so what I do,
Okay.
if I don't know something, is I find the people who do and I keep them close.
Awesome.
And so I found a woman who is in her late 70s, 80s,
Okay.
who does a lot of gardening stuff and then just kind of started going around her a lot. She sells plants. She's not far from me.
Yeah.
And then I've accumulated several others. So big thing for this year is to have a more sustainable place where I can get food, also share with my community, and I'm doing that in my backyard. So yeah,
We're definitely gonna have to connect more in regards to that. Like gardening is such a therapeutic thing. It is such a loving
so
thing. It's so
good.
amazing. Yeah. Are there any goals that you have for this year or any plans that you are going to get to enjoy as a result of your financial stability and just your financial literacy? Like what is something this year that just fills your heart full of joy that you're going to get to do in a stress-free way because of all the hard work you've put in?
So at the end of July, I get to spend a chunk of time with my family in Michigan.
Okay.
It looks like about it should be. I'm still getting guilt tripping one or two of them, but it looks like most of my family will be there. So that's huge. Family is everything. And then beyond that, I've really been strong on we need to be able to spend at least once a year with my partner's family in Peru. So Peru will be more a beginning of next year, but for
Yeah.
a chunk of time to go back and be with them. So those are
And
the
how
two big ones.
exciting, like, to just be able to plan that and look forward to the experience instead of having to worry about how you're going to save for it, what type of detriment it's going to cause, all of
Yeah.
those just like negative factors. We do have a question from Hannah.
Cool.
She said she'd like to know what are some conversations you have with yourself to move through discomfort and to see yourself through to the other side. So, I know that you're
Yeah.
pretty far along in your journey, so these could be things that you're facing now, or maybe even the previous version of you, the things that you said to pull yourself through to this level.
So I do a lot of self-talk. So you were asking like, how do I reward myself?
Yeah.
I'm a big one. If something gets done, I'm like, good job. Like,
Awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
you did it. Like I try to, Brandon Burchard will talk about feeling the joy.
Yeah.
We got everything thrown at us at all areas. But are we really taking a moment to say, oh my goodness, I just helped this person? Like, that's awesome. Good job. Right. So I do that quite a bit. I talk back to myself a lot. So I'm gonna show my perkiness. So my brain tells me all these different things. It still does.
Okay.
Okay. And it that does not change. I think
Okay.
we come with the same brain. So my brain's like limited mindset. Oh my goodness, what about this? We're not gonna be able to make it happen, blah, blah, whatever it is. Linda, I literally call her a different name. And Linda means beautiful. So I feel like it's still being kind to myself. I'm like,
Mhm.
Linda, listen, honey, I really appreciate those thoughts, but it's not needed right now. That's not going to get us where we need to go.
Yeah.
And then I'll say the what things that I need to hear, right? I am capable. I'm able to do this. What is fear? fears false evidence appearing real. It is not something I engage my future plans on. So step away from that. Linda, where do we need to go? And just talk to myself.
I love that. I know that we have a lot of big Mel Robbins fans in here, and we're all
Ah,
fans of the high five yourself in the mirror. Like those little self-reassuring actions are so amazing, and they might seem goofy when you start, but it really does have such a positive impact on you. And again, if we
yes,
view ourselves as our most valuable asset, we definitely should be caring for ourselves as we would any other asset that we own. So yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh, I love Mel. I actually get to go see her at the. I'm gonna go hang out with Mel at the end of this. I say hang out with
Yeah.
Mel, if only dreams. But she has been someone like
Oh my gosh, yeah.
what we listen to, what we surround ourselves with, what we put back into our ears. If I'm feeling in a really low vibration state, I try to make sure what I'm putting back in is something that's high vibration. The
Yeah.
music I listen to, like
Yeah.
there's a song that I love that's literally Proud of Myself, and I will sing it full blast
Who's it
to
by? We'll
myself.
put that in the description. People can listen along as they listen to this episode. Um,
I would have to double check
Okay, yeah.
names and
We'll
things,
figure it out
but
and we'll definitely attach it. We love sharing things like that. You know, the books that have
yeah,
inspired us, the music that we listen to, everything about our daily experience can either negatively impact us or positively uplift
yeah.
us. So, no, that's amazing. All right. Well, if there are no other questions from our audience, then we will thank you so much for your time, Bayleigh. It has been such a pleasure. I am personally excited to follow your journey as we move through this year. I am really excited to see your financial expert business grow, for you to connect with more people in our local community and a global community. Heather is asking if we've got workshops available on your website. Do you have a website, or what is your preferred social media platform to connect with you on?
I do have a website.
Okay,
I
okay,
do. And so my website is, I'll have to double check how you're going to get to it because I
yeah,
think I have it leaked on some of my things, but it's
okay,
find your FU number.
okay.
So my your financial
Wow.
your financial understanding number.
Okay.
I like things that are gonna we all have problems with memory, I feel like. And so I like to make it real easy, not only for myself, but for other people.
Yeah,
So that social media is another one. You can find me at Bayleigh_Laster. You can reach out to me there. Always happy to have conversations, understanding that I was really, really stressed when I started this. And so I'm not looking to make other people more stressed. I'm looking to give clarity, educate, and hopefully ease that anxiety.
yeah. I think that resonates throughout your content. I've had the pleasure of seeing some of the, latest content that you've released, and it is just so personal. It is so straightforward. It is so just uplifting and full of knowledge. So definitely, we'll include your social media links as well as your website in our episode description. So if you were looking for a licensed financial expert to help you begin your road to financial security, or even to enhance the journey that you're on, Bayleigh is definitely our recommendation. So, yeah, I am definitely looking forward to connecting with you more throughout this year. I'm sure that our good friend Hannah will put on at least one more event this year, so I'm sure that we'll see you at an upcoming Friend Fest. But yeah, and
Yes.
then possibly for another episode, maybe a little bit later in the year, to dive deeper into financial stability for creatives.
Let's do it. I love it. Oh, so
Yeah.
thankful for y'all.
Thank you to our audience for joining us. We appreciate you as always. And again, Bayleigh, thank you so much for your time. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone again on a new episode of the Developing Life podcast. So have a great evening, everyone.
Awesome.